I'll open up with the first question. Since congressional districting is actually a very national issue, and the Supreme Court of the United States has even been involved in New Jersey's own congressional districting, do you think that this should be executed by a national committee, or should it be retained by the state levels?
I don't know of any proposals to do that. It might make some sense to have a national commission do it, but there is a strong argument that a lot of local factors may be important in terms of making a good congressional district. And I'm afraid that I would have some concern that a national commission would not really know the geography well enough in each state to do a good job of that. It might eliminate some of the problems.
First, a short question. Is there any constitutional prohibition against New Jersey doing away with districts altogether and having 13 at-large representatives?
Not constitutional, but there is statutory. The districts are required by federal statute.
Okay, so there would have to be a statutory change.
I think so, yes, at the federal level.
Okay, now my follow-up question is going back to the 11-member district. There was some criticism, I vaguely recall, the 11th member, professor from Princeton. After the fact, it turned out he was not a voter.
Not a voter?
Not a voter.
Not a voter?
Not a voter. That he had not voted, and there was some bitter criticism of that, where people hang out and make bitter criticisms. And I wondered if that was justified or not.
I'm not sure whether that fact is correct, but you can argue that he would be an ideal 11th member, not being a voter, because then he's not contaminated with one party or the other. I must say that during that process, a lot of attacks were directed, some attacks were directed at me as a staff member, directed at me by some of the Republican members, and I was happy to tell them I was a registered Republican.
My name is Barry Peterson. I teach business ethics here as an adjunct. I also helped put together a report out of the Prudential Business Ethics Center at Rutgers Newark on political corruption in the state. One of our conclusions was that a possible factor in corruption at all levels, where there are districts, is the way that apportionment is done. And has anyone tested the thesis that if there is not party competition, there is likely to be higher corruption? Because then the person really is accountable to the party boss, not so much the voter.
Well, I think the way that the apportionment is done, I'm using the term apportionment to cover a wide variety of schemes. Compare what we had in New Jersey before that convention in 1966. For many years before 1966, we elected our state legislature with one senator from each county, regardless of its population. For example, Newark would have, or Essex County would have one senator for 900,000 people in those days. Cape May County would have one senator for 35,000 people. And secondly, that's really sort of beside the point. The main point I was trying to get at is that the election of the General Assembly, the lower house of the legislature, was on an at-large basis. For example, Newark at one time, or I keep saying Newark, I mean Essex County, at one time had 12 members of the General Assembly, the lower house of the legislature, and all 12 members ran on a county-wide ticket. Now, when that happens, then the county boss, the county leader, the county organization has a lot of power. And the thought was, when you go to a districting system where people run in either one-person districts or two-person districts, that breaks down the power of the county organization. Whether it had, I think it did for a number of years. Whether it still operates quite the same way, I'm not sure. I think the county organization still have a lot of power, but individual candidates, I think, have a lot better shot probably than they did under the old system, where you had countywide tickets, and really the place on the ticket was what was determined by the county organization. So I think those two examples, yes, the system of apportionment does have a lot to say about who controls things.
Next question.
Yes, you talked a little bit about estimating in the 2010 census, estimating the population. And
You mean the undercount?
estimating the undercount, yes. The presumed undercount. What do you believe is going to happen, and what are the interactions between that estimating and legislation for immigration? How big of a relationship is there in that underestimating undercounting is dependent upon illegal immigrants and issues like that?
I don't know how big that is. It varies around the country. For the argument about putting an undercount adjustment into the census was a little more intense in 1990 than it was in 2000. And in 1990, in order to try to get some idea of what the impact would be on New Jersey, I was able to get hold of some estimates. This was in advance of the census. Get some estimates of how large was the undercounted population and what would be the effect of putting an adjustment in. And then I did a new run of the apportionment of seats. I found out that based on the figures I had, putting an undercount adjustment in the census of 1990, we would have been in a less favorable position than if you didn't put the undercount adjustment in. Now, I don't know whether that holds now, because the patterns of immigration have changed since 1990. But the thing that always puzzled me about the undercount adjustment, the statisticians argue that they can do a better job than just trying to count the population by putting in this adjustment. And my feeling always is, yes, if you're using that undercount adjustment just on a gross level for the entire country's population, or the whole state's population, but what the heck do you do when you get down to districting, when you're dealing with a municipality or a ward or just an election district? How can you apply an undercount adjustment very well to these small areas? And I haven't received a very good answer on that.